I will call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have roll call, please.
Member Waller?
Yes.
Selby?
Yes.
Willickson? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Dees?
Yes. Citizens' comments. Now is a good time to approach the council as part of the meeting. Seeing none, we have no public hearings tonight. We have reading. Oh. Got one snuck in here. Okay, sorry, Reggie.
That's all right.
Floor is yours.
I just wanted to you guys to be aware that we, the Morris Police Department, conducted our bi-monthly alcohol compliance checks at the end of October, beginning of November, and 3 of our local establishments were non-compliant. So they were sent letters with a fine for the establishment and a fine for that employee that was not compliant also. So I just want to bring that to your guys' attention.
What's the fine for the employee?
Same as for the establishment, $250.
But the liquor store was okay.
Liquor store.
And it was actually our
Oh,
newest
good.
employee, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was good.
Who
But
do you use to do this? Underage people?
They are, yes.
Yeah?
There
They have to
are
be.
individuals that have been cited for underage consumption, and that's a way for them to work out their citations. And normally once there's certain criteria that you look at to utilize, it's not ones that are habitual or very extremely intoxicated at that time. So we can get 350.
Good.
So 3 non-compliant, how many are checked?
We checked all of them that are on the list, and I believe there was
7.
Yeah, I want to say 7. That's all I have. Just wanted to let you guys know.
Very good. Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? I'll look and I'll look. Okay. No public hearings. Reading and approval of minutes from 11/12.
I'll move to approve the minutes from October 12th? No, November 12th, sorry.
October.
I'll second that.
They say October though on the minutes, don't they?
It actually says October 8th on the minutes, but it's from the 12th of November.
Oh, yeah.
The heading of the minutes should be changed.
Just threw me.
Okay, did we get a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And the same condensed version?
I will move approval of the condensed minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. I'll move approval of the items on the consent agenda, which is the audit of city bills, community ed information, the October 16th tree board minutes, and the revenue and expenditure reports.
I'll second.
Any discussion or any questions on any of the items? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Petitions, requests, and communications. We have authorization to use Click Content Studios for social media posting for the tourism board.
Yeah, the tourism board met and talked about, actually we met with Click Content, we did a conference call that worked out really good to communicate with them in the conference room at City Hall. And we were talking about the website update that's going to take place, and one of the questions that had come up at the last meeting was, what about social media posting? Nothing's been done since we discontinued the contract with Data out of Sauk Rapids. And I had asked them to give us a listing of prices for what they would charge to do social media posting. We actually have a number of social media platforms that haven't really been dealt with since we got rid of Data, and so tourism board looked at it and they thought that the most prudent thing to do would be to start doing some social media posting, and that's where you get the recommendation to start at the $400 per month. If you remember right, I think we're paying Data about $1,300 a month for doing all the different things that they were doing with us. And then if we need to do a little bit more, we could probably just do a little bit more and we'll just see how it goes with them and see how they do. The website design's coming along with them. And actually, I had traded a couple emails today on a YouTube channel. We already have one for the city, so we're gonna be talking about that. If we have a separate one for posting YouTube videos, but we had a really good discussion about, you know, what the next steps are for how we communicate for tourism. So that's a recommendation, and then we can try it and see how it works.
Is that going to be run by someone before they actually do the posting, or, I mean, for
Yes.
approval, or?
Yes,
Okay,
that's the problem that we had before.
yeah.
Was that things were getting, and that's one of the reasons why we switched, because things were getting posted because that didn't make any sense for us here in Morris. And like I said, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we'll be looking at the posts before they make them, and we'll be providing suggestions. Actually, one of the things the tourism board is going to do at their meetings is to sit down and talk about the things that are upcoming that we should be talking about, and then we'll give that information to them if they're not in on the discussion at the time, because I worked really well to conference with them during the meeting, and we actually had the website pulled up so we could look at the website design that they were looking at as we were talking about it. And you know, one of the features of the new the website is going to be a calendar that it's going to be built on WordPress, which is a platform that we'll be able to do stuff ourselves. We don't have to pay somebody to do it. And actually, one of the things I'll be talking with you about probably in 2 weeks at the budget meeting is that the city's website is terrible. And we did have a meeting with Iceberg Hosting to talk about doing the same thing with the city website. You know, there's things on there that, you know, we pay a lot of money to get them put on there, and like minutes, the history of our minutes, which there's other places that you can put minutes to track them, but there's things that aren't on there that should be on there, and it should be updated, and it should be more seasonal, and as things come up, like we're going into the winter months, and we really talked about having it as being the go-to place to look for information. So, you know, we can send people from Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those to our website. If you're interested in finding out more information about stuff, go there and take a look at it, you know, because we'll be posting stuff. But we have to have the ability to do that locally. And the calendar, you know, we're going to put everything on the calendar. When we popped in and looked at the tourism one, it was very easy. You know, things to do. You click on it and you go to a big calendar and it'll show all the things going on in Morris. You know, and we're going to meet as a tourism board and keep tracking all those things that are coming up. And actually Colby Gosman was there, and she's supposed to be a member of the tourism board, and had some very good input on what's going on with the chamber. And I think that'll be a much better system. But like I said, with the city, and then the city, there's like 5 different websites. You know, so there's one for the fire department, the police department, and there's actually one for the library. And you can link them, but you still go to a different site. And then we actually went in and took a look at the sites to see how current the information is, because it's not current in a lot of cases, and that's your first identification that the site is there and it's maybe not being used all the time. And so then where do you want people to go? Plus the fact that when you have your website set up, then, you know, through Google and stuff like that, you can have the connections made to where people, when they're looking for something, they can go find it. You know, and that's one of the things you get out of the professionals that are in this business, is they know how that stuff works. And we actually have some pretty good people on our tourism board. You know, Julie Eving does a lot of blogging and stuff like that. She knows how all this stuff works, that she's in the business. You know, and we talked about a newsletter, we talked about a blog, we talked about a blog being used as really the start of a newsletter. You know, because the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to set up a bunch of stuff that nobody has any time or nobody's assigned to deal with it. And that's where we get back to this, because there's nobody that we have that can sit down and do all these social media posts right now. We just don't. You know, for the city, we have an intern from the university that works on them. Yeah, but in this case, this is tourism, it's marketing, it's needs to be professional, and needs to look professional, and that's really what we're going for here.
I really like the thought of being able to do some of it ourselves.
Yeah, well,
So that's, because that immediately keeps it current. And what you say about the city webpage, I mean, that should be, I mean, today it should be just a blast if you go to the webpage about the snow that's coming
Right.
and stuff like that, you know.
Yep.
You know, and what a snow alert means and all that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
it can be very timely
Yeah,
if we can
or,
do things
you know,
ourselves.
Like we had a really good discussion about, you know, water softeners and what to do with water softeners, but you gotta get the people trained to go to that site to look for information. And the other thing about these websites is that it's one thing to have it set up so you can go on your computer and look at it. It's another thing to have it set up so you can go on your phone and look at it.
Right.
Because they're two different platforms, and you might not be able to. I've been on websites and it's like, I can't even read this, and you got to blow it up, or you got to try to shrink it down or whatever. And so those are things that they considered, and they're talking to us about and everything. And yeah,
Good. Is this going to be for a certain time period?
I think it's just ongoing.
Just ongoing
until if we like with data, once we decided we didn't like to do it, we just gave them notice.
Good. We need a motion to just to authorize this.
Yes.
So this will just be 8 to 10 tourism posts.
Tourism, strictly tourism.
Tourism?
Yeah.
Okay. And then with the hopes as we're redesigning the whole Morris
Yes.
City webpage then?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
If you have the city webpage, does each department have to have their own webpage? Doesn't it seem a little redundant that each one has their own website when all that
Yes.
could be linked,
Well,
all that should be
yeah.
on your city and you just
Yes,
right
absolutely.
off of that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
You know, if you go to the county website, you're gonna see probably the departments list, and that's actually one of the things that we're looking at is how they're being done. You know, because you know, people are gonna look for, you know, maybe the city of Morris. They might not necessarily look for the city of Morris Fire Department, but you know, and actually, if you go to our website, you're gonna see some links. Like the airport is not a website, the airport is just a page on ours, but yet it's kinda, if you look at it, if you go down the left-hand side, you're gonna see airport, you're gonna see parks, you're gonna see library, you're gonna see them. Some are pages, some are websites. So it's like you don't know when you're clicking on them until you wind up getting sent somewhere else. But yeah, I think that's the discussion that we have is what is the best way for us to get our information out to the public. And the other thing about it is we're looking at paying a lot of money to get the tourism website upgraded. That'll be paid for through the lodging tax. We're looking at a lot of money to get the city's website updated. And then how are we paying for these other websites? How are they being paid for? You know, they might be paid for, like in the case of the library, I talked to Ann, and I think the Friends of the Library are paying money towards it. And that's fine, you know, if it works out that way, but if those sites need to be upgraded, it's gonna cost a lot of money to do them. And that's really, we weren't looking at the city website until we had this really good discussion about the tourism website and went, yeah, we need to make the city website a better place to go to. It needs to be, we shouldn't have all this stuff on the left-hand side that you have to read down and click, and then I can tell you, what was it? The number one thing people were looking for, you wouldn't even guess, I can't remember what she said it was. Housing, yeah, where to rent a house is the number one thing that they're looking for when they go to our website. And actually, the HRA is no longer a city HRA, but it's under the city website and under the city moniker.
No,
So when you click on the city HRA, it comes up and it says the county HRA. Because they did change the name on that web page, but it should be part of the county now. But yet the rental housing licensing program is a city licensing program, and we probably need to have a page for that, so you can pull it up and look at it, and then you'll find out the information to go to. So the next step for them is, I'll talk to you about it, but then the next thing would be to sit down and have kind of a brainstorming session to talk about, you know, what would you like to see in a website? What would we like to see in a website? Maybe bring some people in from the public that use it to see, and then the website would be linked to all the social media platforms and vice versa.
Blaine, what was the thought process in having all the departments have their own individual websites? And was that done before you got
None.
here?
They probably did it on their own, is what happened. I would imagine within the department, somebody said, you know, it'd be, and actually the transit has like a Facebook page, you know, and we did a communication policy that now sets out the rules for doing things like that. But no, I think they all decided on their own to do their own thing, you know. But I think the last thing that was on the fire departments was 2018. You know, and so I don't know that they're updating. I mean, the new fire truck isn't on there and stuff like that, and I don't know who does it for them. But there's, you know, what do you want on it? What do you want the public to see? What do you want to give the public? And then who's going to do it? Because, you know, if it's costing money to do it on a separate site, then why would we do it? We could just make it a separate page. And still, or have several pages.
Yeah, I could understand, you know, to a point if people are coming, if they're interested in moving to Morris, let's say, you know, they may want to check out the law enforcement, and what kind of law enforcement program do they have, what kind of fire service do they have, all those things. So I think it's valuable information for people to access.
Yeah, there's good information on it. I mean, how to sign up for the emergency notice system, very good information on it. You know, so.
In these discussions with the, going forward, are the department heads part of that as well?
Yeah, they will be, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
You know, because there's things that, you know, we're struggling. We've talked about it over and over and over. How do we communicate with people? You know, what's the best way to communicate? And it's probably going to be a ever-changing thing, too.
Yeah, it's definitely a multifaceted approach. I mean, not everybody reads the newspaper, and not everybody listens to Morris Radio, so and not everybody gets the internet, even though we're good with the internet, but
one of the
everybody
good
gets it.
discussions we had, and one of the good questions I would throw out to you is, how do we want? Actually, when I was down at the University of Minnesota for the session to talk about what we learned in Germany, one of the state agency people made a very good comment, and it was basically to the fact that sometimes we dictate how we want people to get information from us. We might even dictate, when people are in front of us, how we want them to communicate with us. You know, we ask them to tell us what they want to tell us or whatever it is, but one of the things that we should do is find out how they communicate. You know, because we know young people today communicate a lot different than young people when I was a kid communicate. And what is it you want? You know, because you know, and Gerard Reed talked about that a little bit. There's a global push by young people where they're demanding things from their government. You know, and so how do we want them to communicate? And then what are the things we're required by law to publish things in the newspaper, which is a technical, you know, legal kind of thing, but where do we want to direct people to go to get the information from us? Is it the newspaper? Is it the radio station? Is it the city's website? Or, you know, where is it? Because then we can turn around and say, well, this is where we're putting information, you know, and it could be we send something out on Facebook or whatever it is and say, you know, go to the city's web page, and maybe people won't go to the city's web page, but if we make it easier for them to do it, because we want people to have this information, whether it's on we had a good discussion today about, you know, what is the policy for snow emergencies, because right now we haven't changed it. We talked about it a couple different times, and it's really too late to make the change now, but some cities don't let you park on streets during the winter time. Breckenridge.
Period.
If we call a snow emergency, last year we had a problem with the tow companies even being able to tow all the cars. You know, so then we ran into trouble with people that were mad because they got a bill for towing and their neighbor never got towed. Well, they never had the capability to tow the neighbor in the time frame that we needed them towed. But you know, at the same time, we want people to understand that when it snows, the law, you need to get your vehicles off the road so that they can go plow the road, you know, and how do we tell that story to the public the best way? And it's a struggle because people aren't taking information in some cases at all. So this will help, you know, having a good web page is going to help do that, you know, and obviously we use the newspaper, obviously we use the radio station to tell our story, and hopefully there's enough people that are picking up on everything.
Great. I think that's just the beginning of the discussion. I will make a motion to approve or authorize Click Content Studios to do the social media postings for the tourism board.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Ordinances and resolutions. We have resolutions setting polling places for 2020 elections.
Yeah, there's a new requirement in the state that you have to set your polling places by the end of the year each year, and we do have elections coming up next year. Actually, there's going to be a presidential primary. I know Sandy was looking at the process of trying to get set up for that, but we're recommending that we set the polling places the way they were set before, and then this is a big year coming up because it's a census year. And one of the things I asked Sandy and Aaron and Jordan to look at is what is the process for changing the precincts in Morris. There's 6 precincts, and so we by law have to have a separate place for those people in that precinct to go vote. It can be in the same building, so we actually have 3 polling places, but there's 6 voting precincts, and we have to staff all this, and the last election worked pretty good for bringing people into the 3 polling places, and the presidential primary is going to be a very, very late turnout. Very late turnout. I'd be surprised if there's 10% of the people would come out and vote in that presidential primary that's going to happen. I think it's in March, but then we'll have the big fall election. So
there'll be a presidential primary that we have to be involved in. Then
Yes.
there'll be a primary election probably for
Yeah, there's actually
local.
a presidential primary, a primary, and then a general election. And the presidential primary is, the way it looks, I sat in on a conference call, where they're talking about the funding of it. It's basically the parties picking their candidates. And then there's still some rules that I don't know if we've seen all of the rules yet come out on that. Because originally there was talk about trying to make a mailed-in ballot, and they nixed that. And then there was a lot of discussion, because it's really an opportunity for the parties to find out who's in their party. And I'm not quite sure exactly what the rules wound up being for that. But there's actually gonna be 4 separate parties to get a ballot for. But the funding of that election is gonna be paid for by the state. And so the rules and regulations for getting reimbursed for election judges and polling places, stuff like that, supplies, are really complicated. They haven't finalized them yet. I think they had a 30-day wait on a public hearing potential for the new rules, and then they're gonna issue them. But yeah, so, and I've seen them before, so it's kind of weird.
So what about like the townships and stuff around the area that have mailed-in ballots for the election? What do they do for primaries? Is
They'll
that,
do the same thing, and so then people will probably, I haven't seen the rules, but you'll probably get 4 ballots in the mail, and then you can only vote on one, and so you'll take that ballot and put it in the mail and send it back. Wow. Yeah, so,
What month is the primary generally in?
the,
August?
it's usually it's usually
August.
late in the summer.
Okay.
But yeah. And I don't know if they've done one every presidential election.
But that's the only thing that'll be on this one in March will be the presidential.
Primary, yeah, that's it. You know, and the big discussion was whether or not, who's gonna know when you want, because you have to go in and ask for the ballot that you wanna vote. And then I don't know what the final rules were yet as far as, who gets to know that information of who picked what ballot. Because originally the discussion was you're gonna have to designate which ballot you wanted, and the parties would have access to that information, so they know who their people are.
Wow.
You know, and it's really kind of a strange situation, you know, but I like Sandy said, I haven't seen the rules yet, and I said, well, I think they're still trying to figure out the funding on it, but now she has to find election judges to work those tables that we have, and it's all computerized because we used the voting computers this last time, and that worked out really well, I think. Yeah, I think Hancock switched to mailed-in ballots now. They were one, I think they did. So then it's just down to the city of Morris. We're too big. They won't change the population level to let you do mailed-in ballots. But I think there may still be a couple townships
Yeah,
too
I think so.
that are doing polling places.
I remember when we switched these polling places and just had the 3 and moved it off of campus, and there was quite a bit of discussion and people came. Was there any follow-up to that? Like, prior to this, that there was a lot of discussion, and then once the voting happened, was there any follow-up with anybody from that?
Yeah, actually, they did I think they did a survey out there, because I know I came and talked to a political science class that did the survey. I don't know that there's a lot of big fallout from that from the students. Brian's sitting back there from the college, but I know, I think they liked using the polling pads, you know, because it's technology and they liked using that better, but, no, I'm in discussion with them sometimes. I know I'm going to speak, they have a student thing, when is it, December 5th or 4th, and I was invited to come and speak with them, but no, I don't think it was, I think some of the questions, they actually, they were okay with how it worked out.
There was a drop off in the number of there's a study nationally that studies how what voters are, and we can bring that data if you want to take a look at it, because it looks at it across the nation. So, I mean, I think there's definitely still interest in having one on campus, or I think the other option too, and I know that they do this at other campuses, is early voting or different things like that, early voting centers for new voters, different things like that. So I don't know if there's options for that too.
Well,
So,
yeah,
you know,
and that's,
we have plenty of
well, yeah,
so-
well, and that's the other thing is if, you know, there is early voting, so you can go to the courthouse and vote whenever you want, leading up to the election, pretty much is the way it works. You know, and Sandy and I do the absentee ballot board, for the county, and so then we wind up being involved with it. Actually, we haven't seen how it's gonna work with absentee ballots for the presidential primary. It's gonna be interesting to see how that works, but, that process starts really early, and then you have to go in and verify, you know, everything was right. And if people screwed up on sending stuff back in, then you have to send them new stuff, and they get a chance to fix it and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, we need to set the polling places for 2020.
I will move a resolution setting the polling places for 2020 elections as the Evangelical Free Church for precincts 1A and 1B, Morse National Guard Armory for precincts 2A and 2B, and the Federated Church for precincts 3A and 3B.
Have a second.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Salvi,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Ellison,
Yes.
Mayor Case.
Yes. And city manager report.
What do we wanna talk about before everybody else comes?
You know, I guess I'll, if you want to know what I want to talk about, I want to talk about, you talked about the chloride restrictions, but you really didn't say where we are at, or as
We're
they're
very close. We talked about it this morning in staff. We're very close. Our restriction's right around 400 parts per minute, whatever it is. Ryan's not here, Jim's not here to talk about it, but we're very close. And actually, Chris Swanson from Bolton and Mank, when we came down and talked to Magni Construction about the finalizing what's going on with the water plant, he was very interested in making sure that we're doing everything we can to get under that. Technically, by the end of next year, we have to meet that standard. I think he was a little bit more concerned than I was, because we've worked very closely with the MPCA on this whole thing, and one of the suggestions that he made is that we talk to the big institutional users of water to make sure that they're doing whatever they can to minimize the use of chloride. I talked to Brian Herman out at the university about that, and then actually one of the things that came up a couple different times, and it goes back to how do we communicate with the public, because I've had people call me and say, well, where are we at on this water plant? And so I'll tell them, it's like, well, I didn't hear anything on the radio on it or anything like that. And it's like, I've been on the radio maybe 5-6 times talking about it. Every single time we talk, we'll probably talk about it tomorrow morning on the radio again too. But we talked about sending a letter out to all of the property owners, but that's not necessarily all the people that pay the bills. If we send it out to all the bill payers, some of them don't get mail. You know, they get an automatic bill sent to them to the bank and pay it there. But and then what do we want to tell them? What exactly do we want to tell them? The plant's up and running, and actually this morning we talked a little bit about it, where I think Ryan had talked to one of the water softener company people where they were setting the hardness level at 20 grains of hardness. And it's like, well, we're at 5. So one of the things that we need to share with everybody is what's the rule. The rule in Morris is that you can only have an on-demand water softener if you want to keep one running. You can't have an old style one. And then you have to set it. And we need to tell people what that that setting is. You know, mine's set at 5, and that's what we talked about, is setting them at 5. Actually, in some cases, we're a little bit less than that. So the plant's doing what it's supposed to do to provide soft water. And then just tell people that, you know, the choices are, you can, you know, discontinue using your old one. You can get an on-demand one and then set it at the right setting. There was some discussion about whether or not you wanted to unplug your water softener instead of bypassing it, and whether or not that would create any problems in the house or the building, you know, with regards to the plumbing, and we're gonna check on that a little bit more. And one of the questions that came up this morning had to do with RO systems, because some people have RO systems, reverse osmosis systems, and it doesn't create a problem for us as far as salt, but it may create a problem within a property as far as the flow of the water in the house, and possibly have the water softener might have an issue with the flow of the water. That was some of the discussion that we had. I don't know. We'll talk to the softener companies about that. But the bottom line is that if we know that chloride problem is because of the water softeners, and originally I think we're around 700-800 as far as a level, and now we're down, we're really close to it. The next time they take their readings, we might be under it, and then we're fine. We don't have to do anything else. And that's one of the things that we talked about. If we can get everybody to understand, you know, what they need to do and do it before we go into a house and verify it, because that's going to take a lot of time and effort and money probably to inspect every property to make sure they're in compliance. But if we have to, that's one of the steps that we're going to have to do. But the first step would be go to all the big institutional places and making sure that they're doing it the right way. And you know, in the case of the city buildings, we've been discontinuing the use of water softeners. So we had the one taken out of here. We're taking the one out of the library. I think we're taking the one out of the fire hall, because the water is certainly soft enough to use in our buildings. City Hall, I don't know that we had one in City Hall, water softener that we use, but that's kind of where we're at.
So obviously there is potentially still people that aren't aware of the whole water softener situation. So I think part of it is too, you just have to go ahead and put that out there instead of talking about, well, what we've done. We still haven't put letters in those. And I know, I mean, that was a discussion way back in that, oh, is it worth it? But yeah, it is, because there's obviously still people that's how they get their information. So just again, going back to, you know, web pages, and if we had everything set up, it would be there. It would be on a Facebook page, it would be in an Instagram page, it would be in a YouTube talking about it, it would be in a piece of paper, it would be in the newspaper, in the radio, and you're on the radio and I heard it. But you just have to remember that everybody hears they have a different way of finding out information, and as a city we have to make sure that all those are touched.
Well, and we did send that brochure out on water softeners, if you remember. So we did that. We'll never do that again. That trifold brochure, because we ran into major problems with that at the post office, doing it the right way. So we talked about doing a letter, and we'll do a mass mailing of letters to every. We'll figure out who we need to make sure we get them to. 40% of our property is rental. And the rental property owners know exactly what's going on with water softeners. All of them do.
40% of our units in town are
Housing units are rentals, yep.
Really?
So it's a big chunk, and then, but the one thing we want to do is make sure we know what we want to tell them. Because if we tell them too much, it's just going to confuse everybody, and everybody will start calling in. And so there's some basic information we have to tell them. Number one, that the system's up and running, and this is what you can do with your water softener.
Yeah, and I think I'm really happy that we're close to the number, but I don't think we can rest on our laurels if when we hit it or we get below it a little bit, because people change, you know, the population changes, and I think it's going to be kind of a constant thing that, hey, we have soft water. The city offers soft water. you know, you may or may not need a water softener, and I think that's just gonna be a constant message. You know, maybe
Well,
not
the
as
other
hard
thing-
as right now, but.
And the other thing that we talked about is we will send a letter to all the softener companies. Anybody that deals in water softeners, and tell them two things. One, this is the hardness that we're at. Two, this is what you set your softeners at. So if you're setting them at 20 and you get caught setting them at 20, then we'll have a discussion about it because you're in violation of city law doing that. You can't just do that. And actually, we talked about probably bringing them in, sitting down and talking to them. You know, when I purchased out my water softener so I could keep an on-demand water softener, I set it to 5. They came in and inspected it, and when they got done inspecting it, they set it to 15.
No way.
I didn't say a word to them about it, but that's what they did, and then I set it back to 5. But they did that automatically. They didn't ask me about it. They didn't tell me about it. They just automatically did that. And if they did it for me, as the city manager who has been working on this process, you know that they're doing it for other people out there, and that is not correct. That is not what the law says. You can't make a determination on your own what you want to set your water softener at and set it that way. But the only time we'd ever find out is if we went in and inspected.
Right.
But if you're in violation, if we go in and inspect, then you'll get probably a fix-it order. I just don't know that we're ever going to get to that point where we're going to it's probably going to be a random inspection instead of a full inspection, you know, but that gets to be a very complicated thing.
Did you say something to your softener supplier after that happened?
No, I did not. But
Right, there's your
but,
first
uh,
opportunity
yeah,
to
well-
take care of the problem. I mean, if we're doing that, that's
Yeah.
like Sheldon said, if our goal is to reduce
Right.
the
Yeah.
discharge, and that's what we need to do, so we need to start at the people that are out there that are gonna be programming
Sure,
and
absolutely.
doing the stuff. So, I mean, that's where we need to do it. We have to notify our customers. I've got older neighbors that have stopped me and asked me, and I've told them what they need to do, and I've actually went over and helped a couple of them
Right.
to do it, just because I know the system they have, and it's simple, and, you know, it's pretty simple, but, yeah, we have to keep at it, and,
Well, and the other thing is, if you have an old one, you're wasting money. You know, and that's a good message to put in a letter, is that you're wasting money, because you're buying salt and you're putting it in your system and running it when you don't need to, and and there's a water usage that goes with that. You know, one of the things I noticed when I was going out to the university, because I go down South Street, is they had their salt sale fundraiser again. I don't know which booster club does that at the school, but I saw great big huge stacks of salt in the elementary school parking lot, and people were coming and picking it up to deliver. So if you bought more than one bag of salt for your house in Morris through that fundraiser, I mean, I haven't bought a bag of salt since this whole thing started. You know, and every time I look in my water softener, it's not ready for a bag of salt yet. You know, but when I put one in, it's gonna last me a year, based upon how the system works.
See, I think that's really good information, right there.
Yeah.
I think that's really good information. It's like, I'm hauling 10 bags a month down the stairs, well, maybe something's wrong.
Well, and I
I
think
took mine completely out, and I have 3 ladies
Mine's
in the
gone.
house, so you know,
right.
it's gotta be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine's gone.
That's the test right there, so.
So
it's
we'll,
gone.
so that's where we're at, you know, before we even started talking about it here. You know, that's what we talked about. Actually, Ryan came in and talked to me about it and wanted to make sure that we got something out to people, so we will do that
How often is it being tested for the chloride?
all the time.
Oh, so that's.
Oh,
not-
the chloride?
I mean, so you know where your levels are at.
I
Yeah.
think they do it quarterly.
Okay.
Yep.
That's probably a report that has to be reported
Yeah.
quarterly.
Well, and they don't go up to the ponds and test, they test the flow coming into the system. So they can find out what it looks like coming in from
Oh, so they could actually
the town, yeah, coming in.
sort of, kind of pinpoint that, hey, we're getting really high readings over here on
They
the
could-
west side.
They could if they get it all from the city coming into the plant.
Yeah.
But if they went, you know, to one of the lift stations and tested it, they could probably find out what it's like there.
Well, I hope we don't have to get to that point, but that would be a good place to
Yeah.
start. you know, if we got one place that's worse than others, well, guess what? Cool.
Yeah, and then it'll be tested when we release our ponds into the river, so then they'll know an exact, and it, you know, there was some discussion about that might take a little while to clear it out of the ponds, cause the salt doesn't go anywhere.
Right. That's a good thing we have a year yet to,
Really quick, we're gonna have a pay estimate coming the next meeting for the water plant. The only thing that's really left with the water plant is we did have to do a new well, and they gotta do some finish work on that. We had a grit problem, that actually Ryan today talked about. They're building a little grit storage area, and that's part of, an agreement we have with Magny to do that, and then we'll collect the grit. It's really basically sand that was sifted out of the lime that we got coming into the plant. And then eventually, you know, we'll gather enough up, and then we'll load it up, and it can maybe go out to a farm. It can maybe go to actually he's gonna talk to a gravel pit or somebody like that. Can't go to the demolition landfill. It could've went to a regular landfill, but we got that worked out. And then that contract, as soon as the seeding and grading is done in the spring around that well area, we'll do the final payment on that. And then one other issue, two things I'll bring up. One, Dr. Sabina Engel, I think, Mike, you saw the email that we got today. It was, the German government announced she's gonna get the highest civilian award possible for somebody in Germany from the German government for her work on these things that she's been working on that we're part of, and that's very, very exciting. I think she's probably dumbfounded on it, but so the German government recognizes the work that she's doing, and it's going to give her an award. It's actually, unfortunately, going to be on the 10th December down in the Twin Cities. Their representatives coming, and that's our budget meeting for the city council. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that actually we had two issues came up with solar systems, and when I went looking in our city code actually requires a conditional use permit to put a solar system up or infrastructure up in all zoning districts. And so then we know there's at least one solar system somewhere by a house down on the south side, down by you, Brian. We know that the school put one up. The university is not in our jurisdiction, so they're putting up a solar system out on the campus by the water plant. It's not ours. Somebody asked me if it was ours, and it's not. But the soils lab is going to put in solar now. And then actually one of the things I found out from Bill Kleindl is that I don't think we have jurisdiction over federal land. So they own their land, and I don't think we have any authority. But what I would say to you is that we need to start thinking about that, because the idea, Gerard Reed on Thursday night made a comment that nobody knew what he was talking about, but he did solar on his house in Germany, but in his comment was something to the fact that if you wanted to do it in Morris, you'd have to go see the mayor and get permission, because in Morris it requires a conditional use permit to put solar on houses. And if our goal is to have 80% of the energy in Stevens County produced in Stevens County, that means that we're going to see solar on buildings and houses and stuff. And it should be a permitted use, but then we should establish what the rules are for it. And so I'm going to send out a memo to the planning commission and have them start looking at that. Because there is one contractor called me about possibly wanting to do a solar system for somebody in Morris. Didn't say who it was. They were just looking into the rules, and it'd be a conditional use permit, which is probably something we need to talk about.
yeah,
So
good.
that's all I have.
I'd like to see that put on a fast track somehow with the planning commission. Because that's something that, if we're gonna lead the way, we can't be dragging down because
And
of something like
I
that.
talked to Sandeep about finding sample ordinances for putting up solar. Benson does not have anything in their code. for putting up solar. Mike Jacobson's the building inspector, and he's the building, he actually works for Benson, but he said there's nothing in their code about putting up solar, so there's no requirements. I was surprised it was in ours. I didn't think we had anything in ours.
So it's not a conditional use permit or anything?
Nothing. They just said,
That would be better than actually a conditional use permit at this point.
yeah, but then, you know, just so you know, the contractor that called me brought up every single thing that you'd want to consider when somebody's putting up solar. Like the fact that, do you want people cutting down trees to put up solar? Well, you know how that's gonna go over. But do you want a solar array in a front yard? No. Do you want it right next to the neighbor's fence? You know, and it's like, every time the guy asked a question, it's like, yeah, we should figure out all these answers ahead of time. How high in the air can you put a solar panel? You know, if you gotta get above your trees, do you wanna put it up high? I didn't know that you could put it up that high, but, you know, so those are all things that we should figure out as quick as we can and then get them into an ordinance so that we make it easy for people to be able to consider doing that.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
that's enough.
Any questions of the city manager? We have other business, changing the date of the next meeting, which is, or the second meeting in December, which is the Christmas Eve.
We're just gonna move it to the Monday, the 23rd.
If that works for you guys.
That's recommended, yeah. Do we need a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to change the 12/24 council meeting to 12/23 at 5:15 PM.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Authorize closing at noon on Christmas Eve.
It's not a holiday for us, but it's
Bah,
been
humbug.
traditional to let people go at noon on Christmas Eve. So,
I will make a
can only
motion.
ask.
I will make a motion that we will close the Morris City offices at noon. Does that include the parks and streets guys?
yeah, everybody that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Except law enforcement.
Liquor
I
store.
think the liquor store stays open. Anybody that's essential, law enforcement will,
Yeah.
I mean, they have people on Christmas Day working, so.
Great. All right.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Merry Christmas. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Informational items, increase in 2020 solid waste disposal fees. You see the letter from the Stevens County? So it's gonna affect a couple bucks
Just a couple bucks, but,
for
you know,
everybody.
and then we had a letter last year too, so it went up last year. So, you know, and this is one of those that electricity's cheap, gas is cheap, fuel's cheap, garbage is getting more expensive. You know, that's the way it's working.
Just on that, just to clarify on that letter, it says commercial customers $240 per month to $35.40. What was it before that? I mean, was it just $240 less than $35.40?
Yeah,
Okay. I thought it went, you know, originally I read it, I thought it went from $2.40 to $35.40. Well, that's just
That's a bit of
No.
an increase.
big jump.
You
The way
feel,
it worded.
feel that
I
one.
figured as much, but I thought it was asked.
How are we doing on public access channel?
we're still working on it. It's technology, you know, that's the, actually, Grant worked with Mike Siak out at the college, and one of the things that we have to update the monitor. The monitor couldn't take in the video as quickly as what's gonna wind up coming in from all these places, and so that's the one thing that's happening. I think we did get the codes to be able to set it up the way we want, and they converted actually stuff you see on public access is no longer PowerPoint, right? They're all pages, where before it was a PowerPoint presentation, so then the next step is getting logins for everybody to log in and drop their stuff in. But they had a problem with the video feed speed, I think is what it was, and so we had to update the system.
Okay, well, we're coming along anyway.
Yeah,
It's
coming.
actually working now, right?
It's up and running now.
Yeah.
It should be, yep.
I have some issues with my TV, so I don't get to see it all the time, but, any other questions or anything we bring before the council?
Did we get our playground equipment installed yet this year?
No.
That we got this spring?
Or last
That it was
fall?
too wet, and then
It
there
was
was
too
too many
wet,
kids
so-
playing on it, so then when
Yeah.
school started, the kids were in school, we were gonna get it installed, and
No,
school's been
it's still
in
sitting
session.
out at the, I think they were putting in the pedestals for it so that they could put it in, but, yeah, they did not have the time to be able to do it.
Oh, I guess one other thing, did we, make a final, decision on East Side Park, what we're gonna do with the tarred area?
I don't know that there's final decision, actually, the engineers are doing all the survey work on all those things. Actually, I just had a call from somebody today that was going over there to look at the sidewalks, to do the engineering on the sidewalks for the pad. But I think the plan is gonna be that the blacktop's coming out, there's gonna be pads for the bleachers, there's gonna be sidewalks that are gonna be run, and then we'll have a price quote for doing that. There'll be a price quote for Chiswick, there'll be a price quote for the sidewalks down at Green River Park. All that stuff will come together from WSN, and then we'll probably do one big bid out that'll have the individual pieces priced out so you can see what they cost and decide what you want to do. But the overall plan of it's gonna be to take out the blacktop and have the bleachers there with sidewalks going to them.
So that would be a concrete contractor of some sort doing
Yep,
some of that anyway.
Yep.
Especially the sidewalks, for sure.
right.
Just curious what we could do for homeowners that wanna have their sidewalk replaced,
and
and,
that's-
you know,
and
that's,
so-
it really has to be a part of it, I think.
So, yeah, so that's part of everything that WSN is looking at is to figure out, what the cost would be to do sidewalks, because they did the sidewalk survey, so that information will come back to you, the ADA survey. All that information is gonna be coming back to you, but they actually sent the survey crews out to survey all the different pieces of that, so we know what that looks like.
Good, good. Because it's really nice to have that information, but if we don't do anything with it, it's
Right.
worthless. So, great.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, meeting adjourned.